I'm Hillary Cairns, and on this show, I talk with athletes, coaches, experts, and everyday competitors about training, performance, resilience, and what it means to continue pushing ourselves over time. Today's guest is Claire Shorenstein, a registered sports dietitian and endurance athlete who specializes in helping athletes fuel for both performance and long term health. Claire hosts the Eat for Endurance podcast and is a longtime runner herself, competing in races up to ultra marathons. Nutrition is one of the topics listeners have asked me about the most since I launched Aging Athletically. As we get older, questions about protein, recovery, muscle mass, body composition, and fueling become even more important, or at least we talk about them a lot. Yet there's so much conflicting advice about what aging athletes should eat and whether we should be changing the way we fuel. Honestly, it can all just feel completely overwhelming, and Claire's going to clear it all up for us today. Every little bit of it.
Okay.
Claire works with athletes of all levels, helping them optimize performance while building healthy, sustainable nutrition habits. I'm excited to talk with her about what the science tells us, the biggest mistakes aging athletes make, and the practical changes that can help us continue training, competing, and feeling our best. Claire, welcome to Aging Athletically.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah. So my intro was a lot about what I think listeners want, but did I leave anything out about that you want to share about yourself? Do you want to make sure that listeners know?
Gosh, what do I share? Where do I start there? I mean, yeah, just that, I'm in the trenches with all of you, right? I'm almost 45 years old. I am going through all the changes that come with perimenopause and, taking care of older parents and young children and, trying to remain active and feel good and just juggle all the things, right? So, I always like to remind everybody that, like, just because I am an experienced sports dietitian doesn't make me immune to all of the challenges that you all have. I have experienced it all. So,
Yeah.
just like to share that tidbit that I've made all the mistakes, and it's partly what got me into this field. I continue to make them and deal with them and learn and grow, and that's part of being human.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about how you did get into sport? Well, I guess it's sports nutrition in particular, but nutrition overall.
Yeah, so I'm what you call, I guess, a career changer, although I didn't really feel like I ever had a career, but I went back to school when I turned 30, so kind of got a whole new, like, a second bachelor's degree essentially. But yeah, essentially I was more kind of arts and music focused growing up, was an oboe player, so did classical music and got my master's in music and bachelor's in art history and kind of was all over the place. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do in my 20s, and I fell back into running. I ran cross country in high school and was always active, but, in my mid-20s, while living in London, actually, I rediscovered running and really loved it and kinda caught the bug, and, the distances kept getting longer and longer, and I didn't know what I was doing on the nutrition front. So my learning about nutrition really came out of, my own need because I really didn't feel great and was just making all those mistakes that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And when it comes to running marathons, which at the time I was doing, trying to BQ and all that stuff, uh, I didn't know what was going on, and I did not feel my best, and I was getting injured, and I was under fueling, and I also have a eating disorder and disordered eating background back from high school into college. So kind of that as part of my history as well. So kind of all of this stuff together made me realize, oh, actually, I really am interested in learning more, not just for myself, but I've always wanted to help people. Like, my parents are doctors, a lot of doctors in my family, and I never really wanted to work with sick people, actually, but I wanted to help people in some capacity. And at the time I was working in a law firm in kind of the marketing field, and that just was out of necessity for pay the bills kind of thing, and I really didn't enjoy it. I knew I really wanted to work face to face with people, and really helping people and not in the corporate world. So, yeah, I decided to go back to school, knowing that sports nutrition was where I wanted to end up, and ended up doing a bit of a clinical program. So I'm clinically trained, and then, yeah, eventually kind of worked in other private practices, started my own business, and Eat for Endurance was born and grew from there.
And so was the fact that you ran marathons, is that what really drew you to sports nutrition over nutrition generally?
Yes, yeah. So I was always drawn to performance nutrition and supporting. I mean, you can't really separate the 2. So sports nutrition, like we think about, oh, yeah, like what you're eating immediately before, during, and after exercise. But the foundation of sports nutrition, I mean, it is everyday eating. You can't be a successful athlete if you're not also working on nutrition more broadly speaking. So when I say like I'm a sports dietitian or when I talk about sports nutrition, to me that encompasses all the things. The real differentiation is like I'm not like a clinical dietitian where you're working in a hospital. Like I did that for a few years, just starting out while I was finishing my master's and paying my bills and such. Um, but or so that's where it kind of differentiates. So I have my CSSD. It's a special um, certification in sports dietetics. So that's something you get kind of when you've been practicing for a certain amount of time and you have to put in, I think it's like 1,500 hours and it's like a whole thing. So I am kind of specialized in that. But yes, it was because of my own interest in endurance sports, which started out in road marathon specifically, and then grew into kind of the trail and ultra space.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get into some of the questions that I know our listeners have. Big, big question is just, do the nutritional needs of older athletes, does it actually change? We hear all about protein this, protein that, but help us understand.
Yeah. So, I mean, as we get older, obviously there are lots of different changes that are happening, whether, men and women kind of going through these different things. And so, in terms of like actual nutrition needs that change, yes, protein seems to get a ton of attention. And, we think about, okay, well, as we're aging, we are kind of trying to preserve as much of our lean body mass as we can, because we are losing, some muscle mass. We're losing some bone mineral density. Our total energy needs are decreasing somewhat, but it's not like, you're trucking along and suddenly things fall off a cliff. It is a very gradual and minor change that happens a lot later than I think people think. Some people are like, oh my God, I turned 30. It's like, no, that's not when that's happening. um, but, and then of course, like as we age, we're also thinking about some like of the disease stuff that's cropping up. People might be dealing with some cardiometabolic stuff going on, whether, like remember it's high blood pressure or maybe, there's some high cholesterol or like other things, the diseases that we see more frequently as we age, as we get older. But yeah, so for protein, I think it's just been really blown out of proportion. We see everywhere people like just recommending insane amounts of protein. I did a whole episode on protein on my own podcast if anyone wants to check that out in depth. But yes, active people and as we age, those are 2 instances where we do have increased protein needs. It may just not be as high as you think. Um, and so like we know, for instance, that like if you're just like more like a sedentary person, but you're older, like without the exercise piece, we do need more protein to kind of support everything the body needs. And then we add, endurance exercise, strength training, all these different things into the mix. And yes, that goes up as well. But the problem is that people seem to think that you need like just absurd amounts. And so if we're thinking about, okay, well, what is the research saying? This is where things get tricky because there are a lot of conflicting guidelines and conflicting advice out there. And usually when I'm telling people, especially like my endurance athletes, whether you're a runner or whatever you're doing, maybe we're aiming for somewhere between, say, like 1.4 to 1.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. But when I see people doing, like, above that, I mean, sometimes it's necessary if, say, you're recovering from an injury, like a bone stress injury. There are instances where maybe if you are, like, not consuming enough, like you're trying to lose weight, let's say, and preserve muscle mass, maybe we go a little bit higher. If your training volume is like, really, really high, maybe we go higher because, of course, your total needs are going high. But generally speaking, most people don't need to be consuming a lot more than that 1.8 ish, or even sometimes 1.6 grams per kilogram per day. So I like to function in ranges. So you can kind of calculate that out. But that's usually what I'm telling people in terms of protein. And in terms of other nutrients, so carbohydrates, that one is really specific to how active you are. It's not like, you hit 50, 60, 70, or whatever, and your carb needs go down necessarily. Like if you're like, I actually just worked with a bunch of men and women in their 70s. I even had an 80-year-old marathoner. They're all doing Boston and some other races. And, I was explaining to them, like, just because you're in your 70s and 80s, it doesn't mean that you don't need carbohydrates, right? Or I've had midlife women be told by their doctors where they're struggling with maybe some weight gain, other things that, oh, you shouldn't have carbohydrates. It's not good for you at your age, which is utterly ludicrous.
Mm. Yeah.
Everyone needs carbs. So I think when it comes to carbs, it's really kind of associating that more with how active you are, not necessarily your age. As I mentioned, yes, your total energy needs, so part of that, we look at all the macronutrients, but your energy needs do reduce somewhat as you age. But if you are a really active person, you still need those carbohydrates. And then fats, I think of in a similar way. It's like you still need that to get enough energy to meet your total energy needs, depending on how active you are. And then we look at certain micronutrients. So that does change a little bit for people. So, for instance, like calcium is one. Those needs go up, especially for women as we age, to protect bones, right? Which, we're a little more susceptible to some bone disease, bone injuries as we get older. Um, our ability to absorb B12 changes as we age. Vitamin D is another one to think about because our ability to make it in the skin also is slightly reduced as we age. And then, of course, iron needs change for women who are no longer menstruating. So in menopause, your needs actually go down. So yeah, there are like just all these like different things moving and shifting around that we have to keep in mind.
Yeah, wow, you covered a lot with that, and some of it is, speaking directly to me, and I don't this is not a show about a session with Hillary about her nutritional needs, and
Yeah.
but you did say okay, first of all, you said the calcium, which I'm like, "Oh, that's so great because I have these calcium chews that I'm eating like they're candy. They are from Whole Foods, I don't know if that makes a difference."
Yeah, well, with calcium, we want to get that from food as much as possible versus
Okay.
supplementation if we can. I know it can be really hard for some people because especially if you don't eat dairy. I mean, there are non-dairy sources of calcium as well, of course, but it can be hard to kind of eat the RDA, and I forget what it is off the top of my head. Is it oh god. I'm, like, totally blanking on the RDA. But anyways, some people are coming close, some people are nowhere close. So, like, yeah, sometimes we might supplement calcium if it's really necessary, but if possible, if you can get that from foods, that's always better.
Okay. Well, and you also touched on some of the disease markers,
Mhm.
which I actually just released a very short podcast today of just me talking, providing just a little health update that I do have some of the exact markers that you just said. And I think
Yeah.
I had been living in this world of, I train so much and I work really hard and therefore I'm able to counter all of these potential diseases that people succumb to who aren't active in this way, and that's proving to not be correct. And so personally, I'm making some dietary changes based on my desire to not take medication. But
Mhm.
I wonder what your thoughts are on, the role of nutrition in sort of countering some of those things as opposed to just exercise.
Yeah, so the first thing I'd say, because for a lot of women, it's LDL cholesterol, and I don't know if that's what you're alluding to, um, so that is very common, and that might be a genetic thing, it might be diet, lifestyle, but something that we do have to screen for, especially in like really active women, is cholesterol going up, and especially LDL cholesterol because of REDS, because of being in a chronically underfueled state. Because we do know that if you are chronically underfueled, we are mobilizing more fat tissue, and we do see increases in LDL cholesterol in that case. We see all kinds of other labs get out of whack as well, like liver enzymes and other things. But so it's always important. And this is again a topic I have addressed on my own podcast about, like with perimenopause, let's say, like is it perimenopause or is it low energy availability? And kind
Mhm.
of trying to parse out what's going on because there are some overlapping symptoms. And it's really easy for, say, a healthcare provider to look at some labs. And if you're not sports informed, to look and just automatically see high cholesterol and be like, oh, well, you need to exercise less and eat better and lose weight and da da da, and all this stuff. And it's like, well, is that appropriate? And maybe it is appropriate, or is it really inappropriate because this person's already in a low energy availability state? So that's something I always like to kinda just throw out there to make sure, is it really like a genetic, likely high cholesterol, or is it aging, or is it that, or is it like, are we nourishing this person adequately? So, like, how do we differentiate between all these things? Well, if we get someone to be adequately nourished, does it get better or does
Yeah.
it stay the same? So that's kinda something we look at. We also see, like, elevated hemoglobin A1C. That's part of underfueling or stress, so it can be really confusing sometimes to people where these markers that are associated with, you know, maybe you're not exercising enough or maybe you're not eating well enough or whatever, but really it can also be something totally different. So it's just good to be aware of those things. And then let's say someone is not in a low energy availability state, and this is just something else. Maybe it is genetic. Maybe you can improve your diet, whatever. And I think it's important to state very clearly that food is not medicine. I'm a dietitian. Obviously, nutrition is very important. I believe that very strongly, but food is not medicine. Medicine is medicine. So, in many cases, some people can absolutely make diet and lifestyle changes, and that may be adequate to prevent disease progression or to manage things or do whatever. And for other people, it's just not because of genetics and whatever
Yeah.
else. Um, so pharmaceuticals have a time and a place, and we don't need to be ashamed of that, you know? Um, a and food is such an important piece of the puzzle, and as is sleep, as is stress management. I mean, just, training in a smart way, not overtraining. There are lots of things, like, I like to think of, um like, just stress as this overall thing where, like, yes, we have, like, life stress, we have training stress, we have the stress of if you're not eating enough or appropriately, that's a form of stress on the body, and that has an impact on our overall health and well-being. So, and then when we age, it's like, yes, we have all of these different diseases, like, risk goes up, and you start to struggle with sleep, and all these things happen that might be just making it harder to feel good and stay healthy. So, yeah, I think about all of that. And then in terms of like, okay, well, where does nutrition come in? It's nothing drastically different than what I recommend to younger clients in terms of, eating consistently, eating balanced meals, eating regularly, making sure you're eating in a way that is supportive of how much you train. Because like if you're on a low carb diet or something, that's not appropriate if you're an athlete, right? So it's just kind of going back to a lot of the basics of like, are you including plant foods? And, I'm rambling at this point, but there's a lot of stuff that is very important to support health. And it's a lot of the same stuff we hear over and over again, regardless of how old you are.
Yeah. Are there any particular mistakes you're seeing that older athletes make?
Um, Mistakes. Yeah, I think it's number one, assuming that you don't need carbs or as many carbs just because you're older. That's one. So really making people understand that you still like you still need to match your carb intake to how active you are. That doesn't change. Um, and yeah, I don't know. What other mistakes do I see in my older clients? Well, I guess it depends. Like as I said, I just worked with a group of older athletes in their, early mid 70s and an 80-year-old, and I love that they were still willing to learn and they're open to changing things, but, a lot of people are very set in their ways, and, um, yeah, what mistakes? I think another mistake I see is this belief that, like, even in my 70 and 80-year-olds, that losing weight is kind of the be all end all, and these were not big people, but thinking that, "Oh, I have to lose these 5, 10, 15 pounds." It's like, "Wow, God, that still has not gone away. This person is 80 years old," you know? And I understand that, your body changes across your life, and we all have our insecurities or we just don't feel comfortable. And obviously, we have to keep in mind different health things. But weight isn't everything when it comes to performance. It's really just one piece of the puzzle. And same with health. So I don't know, just putting too much emphasis on the scale. I still see that. Honestly, it's all the stuff I see with everybody. It's not having a clear plan, not prioritizing nutrition the same way you prioritize your training, not eating enough. That across the board is the number one thing I see with everybody. My with my like endurance athletes, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
stuff like
What about the timing of intake? Uh, we've heard about this window after hard training. You've got 30 minutes, hurry, shove something down. Do you kind of support that? And is there anything unique about an older athlete, or is this sort of same thing for all athletes?
Um, yeah, I think people think that recovery is just this window and that's it, when the reality is recovery is an ongoing process over 1 or 2 days, depending on kind of what you did and what's going on. So I think a better way to look at it is that post workout, especially if it's a long or hard effort, is a really important eating opportunity to support recovery, to kick things off and really get that whole process going. And the longer you've been out there, the more you've missed. Like you probably missed a meal, maybe even 2 meals, depending on how long you're going, like, but you missed something. And it can really throw things off. You're coming out of whatever you just did in a depleted state. And so we really have to get things going with hydration, fluids plus electrolytes, carbs, and protein. Those like the really main things. And then, of course, you're doing a balanced meal, bringing in the fats, bringing in the plant foods, everything to support yourself and feel good from that effort and feel good for your next effort. In terms of what changes as we age, well, as I'm sure you've experienced, and I certainly have, number one, you can't get away with what you could when you were younger, right? And number two, recovery just it takes longer. It just feel like you don't recover as quickly as you used to, or at least I know I don't. Um, things just you feel it a little bit more, and so it becomes even more critical to really pay attention and be timely with how you nourish yourself, especially if you did something pretty significant and you want to do something tomorrow or the next day. You want to kind of bounce back pretty quickly and feel strong. Um, but yeah, no, there isn't just like, "Oh, you have 30 to 60 minutes and then the door closes and you missed it, too bad, you're done." Like, that's just not how recovery works. But your body is really well primed for, fluids and carbs and all the things at that time. It's really receptive and, you wanna take advantage of that time period. So I like to, like, zoom out and just think, "Okay, well, you woke up, you had your meal," which, you know, I don't know how big it is depending on what you did. You went out for a while and you came back and maybe it's even midday at this point, or maybe it's like you were out so long that it's like mid-afternoon and you miss lunch. And so it's like, again, why would you delay things even further? So it's thinking about it from lots of different angles, not just like recovery, but also like practically speaking, like how much have you eaten today? Because did you just slam a bunch of gels and, sports drink? And like, what else are we missing here?
Yeah, speaking of gels and sports drinks, do you have any concerns or things that we should just be careful about for people who are real longer endurance athletes around just huge intakes of carbohydrates like that or huge intakes of sodium?
Well, for carbs, no, I don't because we process carbohydrates and specifically sugar differently, you know, before, during, and after exercise. So, no, we need that. That's kind of the fuel that our body is receptive to. And as long as you're not excessively, like in terms of like your total energy intake, and as long as it's within the context of a relatively balanced diet and you're getting the other nutrients you need and you're not like excessively consuming calories, there's no downside to consuming the carbohydrates you need to fuel the exercise, like if you're doing it appropriately. Um, and wait, what was the other thing you asked?
Part just about electrolytes, and I'm
Electrolytes,
thinking,
yes.
particularly in a very long effort when you're
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, and just one more thing about the carbs, like the way I like to think about it is like, sometimes we think, like, you're phrasing it as like, "Oh, is there any downside or what's, the consequence or whatever of having these things?" But what's the consequence of not having those things? It's good to kind of think about it from the other perspective as well, and there are lots of consequences that could have, really bad ones, and if we think about, again, from underfeeling standpoint or just not be able to do your workout or, and then more broadly speaking, in terms of the sodium piece, electrolytes, yeah, I think a lot of people are going overboard with electrolytes recently or lately with just marketing and people thinking they need to sip them all day, every day. As we age, I do see plenty of clients who have diagnosed hypertension and they're even on medications. And it can be really confusing because they're like, well, I'm being told to limit my sodium, but I'm an endurance athlete, so what do I do? And it's like, okay, well, we just need to make sure that, you still need to replenish what you're losing, like, that's still important. We're being mindful of your overall diet, and when it comes to eating to support, like, healthy blood pressure or to, manage hypertension or high blood pressure, like, it's not just about what to remove, it's what you include too. So, yes, we are being mindful of sodium intake. We are still replacing what you need to replace during exercise. Maybe it's helpful to get like a, a sweat sodium testing, like a sweat composition test, so we can be really specific with it or not. It really depends on the person. And maybe we're not kind of slamming all the other things outside of exercise. And it really just depends though. Is this person a heavy sweater? Is it a really hot environment? We might still do some preload and, have them drink plenty of sports drinks and all that afterwards. But we're being just really mindful about it. But we're also in the everyday diet, we want to include calcium and magnesium, plenty of fiber. Like we're just, being mindful of lots of different things to support health. So again, it's not just about what you're excluding, what you're including. So we just bring a little bit more attention to it. And I would say in terms of like people who do not have hypertension, and that's not kind of on their radar in their health history, still being kind of aware of, okay, well, I don't need to be drinking this 1000 milligram sodium packet like on a regular day where I'm just sitting in front of my computer. No, you don't need to be doing that.
Yeah.
But if it's I mean, maybe not 1,000, but everyone's different with what they need. But yes, we want to be consuming it during, a ride or a run or whatever we're doing, and it's hot outside, or even if it's not hot outside, we still want to get some sodium in, right? So, sodium and hydration, like those things are really, really individualized, and you just have to kind of figure out what you need for yourself through sweat testing and experimentation.
Okay. All right. How about supplements?
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on or on what are the most important, if any, supplements that older athletes in particular should be taking? I'm sure you're aware, creatine, collagen, those things just come up over and over again. And are we all just suckers for the marketing?
Yes. Yeah, so in terms of supplements, I mean, it's such a huge umbrella of things, and so I like to kinda separate it out into kind of the vitamins and mineral supplements, right? And then we have our performance supplements, and then we also have kind of the sports supplements, which is, like, a totally different category. That would be like your gels and your protein powders and, like, all that, that's kinda that stuff. So that's separate from what we're talking about. I think right now we're just talking more about performance supplements and vitamin mineral supplements, and so when it comes to the vitamins and minerals, that's where like we just have to get blood work done to see what you need. And it's very common, like the things I commonly see being off in my athletes, and especially, I mean, not just my older athletes, but just generally, like vitamin D is often low depending on where you live. So kind of getting that tested and seeing where you're at, making sure that's in a good place. If you live in a part of the world that is not getting that much sun, or, kind of like northern hemisphere, or just I forget the exact latitudes, but, you're in the Northeast or something like that, or even where I live in Central California, in the fall and winter, you probably need a dose of like 1,000 or even 2,000 IU's per day to maintain. But I'm usually not telling people just to blindly supplement, but get tested once a year and kind of see where you're at and see what you need to do. So that's one I commonly see. Um, B12, as I mentioned, sometimes people have some absorption issues and just kind of That might be a thing to kinda test and see where you're at. Iron is very commonly a problem, so iron and ferritin. Iron is kinda what's in your blood, like your serum iron, and then, of course, ferritin is the storage form, and they're not the same thing. You can have normal or even high iron and low ferritin, and, literally just released a podcast today on that whole topic, but so again, getting tested and kind of seeing where you're at, and you may or may not need supplementation there. So a lot of the supplementation, like there aren't a whole lot of supplements. I'm like, oh yes, everybody age 50 and up should be taking this. When it comes, especially when it comes to vitamins and minerals, we want to take a food first approach. And then in some cases, we definitely need a supplement to support. Magnesium is one that a lot of people take. In some, in many, like magnesium glycinate is very common, like taken before bedtime, kind of help with relaxation and sleep. And sometimes it's because your magnesium may not be adequate. You can get it tested, test our red blood cell magnesium, not serum. And sometimes people are just taking it to kind of calm down. That's one of those things where it's like, "Ah, it's probably fine. Does everyone need it? No." Um, and then in terms of, yeah, performance supplements, yeah, so creatine. Creatine is one of those things, it's very well researched, it's very popular, everyone feels like they need it. It's found in muscle tissue, and we associate it with like kind of short bursts of activity. And it can be consumed in food, mainly in like red meat and fish and dairy, but you're not getting like the therapeutic dose that you would get in a supplement. You just can't get that in food. You would have to eat too much food to,
Okay.
to get that. We do see more of a benefit when vegans and vegetarians supplement compared to omnivores, because they're just not getting that source in their diet. So they may feel the effects a bit more. Um, and so we see kind of creatine, like, it's being researched in lots of different areas. Like it's researched for like kind of cognitive benefits as we age. We see it in kind of helping to preserve lean body mass. They're just like so many in the sporting capacity, like it's being researched in endurance sports, although that's a very new area. Um, in concussions, there are like lots of different areas that creatine is being looked at. And it's one of those things where if you're taking a low dose, because it used to be that you would like load it at a higher rate and then go down, but now we just recommend taking 3 to 5 grams per day. It's that kind of lower maintenance dose. And I don't really see a huge downside to taking it. It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And also, what I tell people is, have you even tried, like, if you're not feeling good or you're worried about like preserving muscle mass, but let's say you're not doing any strength training and you're eating as garbage and, just don't have the foundations in place, like don't throw creatine at that. Like, that's just a waste of money and time and energy. Like, you need to focus on some of these other things. Like sometimes people are taking creatine thinking it's going to like help them with their muscle building or muscle maintenance or whatever.
But they're not lifting.
They're not eating enough food. They're not doing any strength training. It's like, that literally is so stupid. Like, no. So, when it comes to performance supplements, you always want to think about it as the cherry on top of things. And it
Okay.
doesn't necessarily mean you can't work on things concurrently, like taking creatine while starting the strength training and doing this and that, whatever. But it's not a shortcut. Like, you can't just like throw creatine at something and just expect like it to be just easier somehow. So I just really encourage people to take a look at all the basics and not expect like a single supplement to work miracles, because they're not. Nothing's going to work miracles. You have to just do the basic stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, some people really enjoy creatine. Some people don't really find it beneficial. But it's not one of these things where you're going to take it and like right away, everything's going to change. It's like same with collagen. It's like you have to kind of take it consistently for a while. And timing for that one doesn't matter. You can kind of take it whenever. Collagen, people use it really incorrectly. The research is like okay on that one, but it's one of those things where I tell people, I'm like, worst case, it does nothing. It's harmless. And best case, maybe it helps a little bit. And usually, but like people that are just throwing it in their smoothie post workout as a protein source, absolutely not. Do not do that. Like, that's not going to cut it for you for protein, unless you have another protein source that is like a high quality one, because this doesn't have all the things you need protein wise. Um, But if you're using it appropriately, and let's say you're using it for like osteoarthritis or like a tendonitis or some sort of joint situation or something like that, and you're taking, I think it's, was it 15 grams with vitamin C 30 to 60 minutes prior to exercise or physical therapy or something like that, like, yeah, go for it. You can try and see if it helps. It can be really hard to like really untangle though, like what's what. A lot of the times people are doing lots of different things, and I always ask them, "Do you feel like it helps you?" They're like, "I don't know."
Yeah. Well, I just say, "Well, maybe I would have felt worse if I didn't do these things,"
Maybe.
but
We have to like figure out where we want to invest our time and energy and, money and all that. And
yeah.
so, yeah, collagen is not something I feel super strongly about for people. Caffeine though, caffeine is great. Like if there's one thing I'd say, go for it when it comes to a performance supplement and just, I don't know, bring like something that brings joy to me. I mean, I love coffee. Caffeine is a very well-researched drug, performance supplement that, we know is helpful on many different levels. We don't wanna overdo it, but that's something that can be incorporated in many different ways, into daily life and into sports. So, yeah, honestly, if I had to recommend one single thing across the board, it's caffeine,
Alright, well, I'm not a caffeine person, so maybe I
and you
should
don't have
alter
to.
things.
Yeah, you absolutely don't have to. And, like, the thing is with caffeine is, like, you can have it as part of a sport drink or a gel or, a pill or whatever. Like, there are lots of ways to get caffeine in if you want to do it, but you certainly don't have to.
You mentioned creatine supplementation you found is particularly helpful for vegans and vegetarians. Are there any other things that you think people that fall in that category and are athletes should be taken into consideration?
Yeah, probably B12. Most vegans and vegetarians, are not getting enough of that in the diet. I mean, you can find certain things like nutritional yeast is fortified, you can get that and whatnot, but that's one that you might wanna supplement. Vitamin D is even harder for vegans and vegetarians, like, it's in some foods, but even omnivores may not be getting enough through food. And, yeah, I'd say people paying attention to fish oil, so omega-3 fatty acids. So if a fish oil or an algae or algal oil, as they say, that can be added potentially. And again, so you can test if you really wanted to your omega-3 index and see what you need. Most people aren't doing that test, but you can. Um, so that, yeah, those are some other things that I'm often kind of looking into or looking at.
Okay. I think you also touched on a little bit for premenopausal or menopausal women, like maybe the iron needs change. Is there anything else for women in particular and for older athlete males in particular? Anything gender specific?
Um, yes, yeah, iron needs to reduce just because you're not bleeding anymore, for women. And then as I said, calcium will go up, especially for women, calcium needs increase. Um, yeah, and then are there specific things for women? Yeah, I think it's more just kinda paying like, more across the board things, like another thing I didn't mention is kind of your thirst mechanism can be a little bit desensitized as we get a lot older.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, again, this stuff's really different for everybody, but just kind of staying on top of hydration. I mean, water, what is the well, we need water for a million things, but it carries nutrients, it removes waste products. Like it's just very critical that we get enough of it. Um, I might be forgetting something, but yeah, nothing comes to mind right now.
And anything for men in particular that distinguishes or more just across the board?
Mm, nothing is coming to mind.
Okay.
I think it's a lot of the general stuff. I mean, like, when we age, it's a lot of kind of disease prevention or disease management. And it kind of when we're entering, especially into our 60s, 70s, 80s, all of that.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any nutrition myths that you would like to go away or things you feel like are being promoted that are just completely nonsensical? You've touched on some, but any others come to mind?
Seed oils are bad.
Okay.
That's BS. That's one that drives me crazy. Yeah, I think just like all the carb stuff, people are it's getting better, but we still have just so many people think that carbs make you gain weight. It's like, well, no, eating too much relative to your needs make you gain weight. Now I will say that if you are not eating carbohydrates or eating very few and then you start adding more, and I see this with a lot of my clients coming in, they eat more, they complain of feeling bloated or doughy or puffy and that kind of stuff. And that's, we do have to remember that glycogen, when it's stored, carries a lot more water with it. So when you cut carbs, that's why you lose water weight, as they say. Um, so yeah, but no, carbs themselves do not make you gain weight. I would like people to stop doing that. Um, I think just there's a lot of, I don't know if it's a myth, it's more of a trend, I'd say, of just like proteinifying everything. Just
Yeah.
the protein crackers and protein this and that and protein soda. I'm like, what? Come on. I mean, protein Doritos, why do those exist?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gotta stop. And again, that just plays into this whole, like, "You need protein, so much protein, we gotta put it in your Doritos." It's like, that is just missing the entire point of everything. Um, yeah. Another myth, uh, that you need protein powder every day, you
Okay.
don't. You really don't. Like, I will say sometimes, like, when I do use it more often would be my vegan or vegetarian endurance athletes, and especially my ultra endurance athletes, where their needs are so high and it is just really hard to get enough in. And, okay, maybe we're throwing in some protein powder every day, um, especially like during a training cycle, especially when things get pick up. That might be an instance where I do that. But there are a lot of people I see who are just automatically making like a protein smoothie, a shake, just including it just because. Um, or reaching for, like, a protein bar, and it's like, I know sometimes it's, like, the easier or more convenient option, but, like, in many cases, these people can reach for actual food. Especially because, like, and many of these people are omnivores. They eat all kinds of things, and if you want okay, you want a smoothie, like, you didn't just do a really hard effort, like, you're just waking up and having breakfast. Like, if you don't wanna eat something solid, then put some yogurt and milk or soy milk into a blender with fruit and, I don't know, some nut or seed and, just make us whole food-based smoothie. You don't have to have protein powder to hit protein goals. I guess that would be the myth. It's like, if you have a full serving of a Greek yogurt, that's at least 15 grams of protein. Let's say you add a cup of soy milk to that. Okay, we're at, what are we at? Like 23-ish, 24 grams by now. Okay, let's say you add some chia seeds or flax seeds, something like that. Hemp seeds. Hemp seeds is, you can bump that a few more grams. Like you can easily get in the high 20s, if not 30 grams. Maybe we're adding some oats, like you don't need protein powder for protein. Yeah.
Plus
And you don't
protein
need to
powder is so yucky. I just
well,
can't
I actually don't so I yeah, a lot of them are gross. I personally hate the taste of, like, stevia and monk fruit and everything, so that
Yeah.
cuts out a lot of them for me. I buy unflavored whey protein isolate where it's literally just whey protein isolate, and then I put it like, when I really need to bump it up or let's say I did a really hard effort or something, I might put a little bit of that in there into a smoothie and then
Okay.
put other things in. But yeah, no, a
Okay.
lot of them do taste kinda gross. Um, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm eating pea protein and it
Well,
just
that's gross. Yeah, pea
yeah.
protein tastes horrific. I made the mistake of ordering an unflavored pea protein, and it was so nasty. I couldn't get that I couldn't mask the taste anywhere anything with any food.
Yeah. Well, I'm countering it with like a lot of maple syrup and things that maybe not defeat the purpose, but just kind of
Yeah.
question the method here.
Mhm.
How about looking ahead? Is there any research that's happening in sports nutrition that you're excited about? Things on the horizon?
Well, I think they're finally starting to do more research in women, which is always really exciting. So,
Yeah.
I'm really, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out there. Um, what else? Yeah, um they're starting to do a lot more research on endurance athletes in certain spaces, like we mentioned, like, kinda creatine's been researched in a lot of spaces, but the endurance part is newer, or even something like sodium bicarb, which
Yeah.
is, getting so much attention, but research in, endurance athletes. We don't really quite have that. But yeah, I'd say probably just seeing more research in women would be great.
Yeah. All right. Well, we didn't think we were going to be able to get through the questions, but we actually have.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
yeah,
Probably because I just scratched the surface, and you could literally do an episode on, like, you can make 100 episodes on these
no, we
questions.
could. And definitely want to recommend that listeners check out your podcast because you've had
Yes,
so many
thank you.
episodes that are touching on very, very specific things that we were just touching on briefly. But I do want to shift and have you talk to us a little bit, some answers to questions that are about you as an athlete and a human, not as a person here to be giving us suggestions around nutrition. Well, the first question though actually is a food question, but
That's all good.
it's just asked to everybody, not specific to you. So, what are your favorite foods or drinks to have before, during, and after competitions or really hard efforts?
I probably so I'm in California now. I used to live in New York City, so I'm really missing my New York bagels big time. I sometimes get them shipped out here, but yeah,
Wow.
typically it would be some sort of bagel, with probably peanut butter and a little honey, or an oatmeal kind of situation. Some sort of like bread or oatmeal with peanut butter is usually what I go for, and a banana. That's my before. Um, During, it depends. I'm actually injured right now, so I haven't done anything long in a while, but
Sorry.
I typically, yeah, injury sucks. I tend to reach for, let's see, in my bottles, I'm normally doing either Scratch or Tailwind. They're the Tailwind Endurance Fuel or the Scratch, Sports Hydration, one of those. And then gels, I like Precision, gels, I like their chews, I like Scratch chews,
Yeah.
Bonk Breaker, the sour chews, like lots of different chews, although I've been starting to move away from those, so I haven't, like, really raced in a while. I think when I'm, like, working hard, I don't wanna chew things like that
Yeah.
so much. But it depends, because if I'm doing a trail race and then I'm, like, walking or up a hill or something, it's fine. Um, and, I do the Nature Bakery fig bars. I love those, what to eat
Hmm.
on the trails when I'm training or whenever. What else do I like? I'm trying to think. Gel wise, yeah, I've been using the Precision gels for a long time, and then, trying to think what else I've been doing. That's been me lately. I've kind of honestly though, like as a sports dietitian, I try everything. I mean, I can't keep up with all the products that come out.
Yeah.
There's so
It's
many.
overwhelming.
But yeah, those are just a few that. Oh, Carbs Fuel, it's another one. The gel that I like. Morton, I'm not. I don't know. The texture for me doesn't do it.
Like a chew, you're chewing the gel.
Yeah. Noogs are good. Those chews are sour chews. I like sour things.
Okay.
Candy, of course, pretzels. I mean, if I'm trail running, I'm like eating things too.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are some like my go-tos. And then after, historically, it used to be like a burger and sweet potato fries. That was like kind of my go-to favorite post-race situation. But as I've gotten older, I don't know. I feel like I'm gravitating away from that. So I'm not sure what it is right now, to be
Okay.
honest. But usually it's something savory because,
Yes.
you're sick of all the sweet.
Yeah. So sick of the sweet. All right. Do you have a mantra or phrase that you utilize to get yourself motivated or to deal with hard times in training or racing?
I wish I could remember the one I used when I did Chicago. I mean, this is like over 10 years ago, but I ran Chicago Marathon, and I had like I made myself a little pace bracelet and it had a mantra on there, and I was like repeating it. I cannot for the life of me remember what it was.
A lot has happened since
A
then.
lot's happened. I know that was forever ago. I'm not a really big mantra person, to be honest, right now. Back when I was, like, really competitive and, like, cared about times, because 'cause I'm, like, just so far removed from that at this point in my life, in my athletic point of life, I mean. Um, Honestly, the most recent mantra I had was literally just saying, "Don't fall. Don't fall. Don't fall," 'cause definitely am not the most coordinated person. When
Okay.
I was trail running. That has been one I've repeated to myself. Yeah, nothing really comes to mind. I think I try to just, my mind kind of wanders, or I'm trying to just kind of look around. Um, but now this is inspiring me. I feel like I should get a mantra.
To each their own. You might when you get back into competition after I don't know how long you're gonna be out from injury, but maybe it'll be on your mind and one will just come to you
Well,
without planning.
there's I've heard, like, some people's mantras, like, what I don't know if you know Christine Dercali from Peloton, one of the coaches there.
No.
She was on my podcast forever ago, but she's a
Okay.
cyclist, and, she always says her thing is, like, "I am, I can, I will, I do," or something like that, and I think I was in a race and I repeated that once, and I was just kind of repeating it, and it was a nice little pattern. Honestly, sometimes I count.
Yeah.
I don't know, it
Yeah.
really it depends. That was more my road racing days when it just got boring because, like, I don't know. I mean, trail running, it's usually more like the more scenery, like, it's more fun than road running where it's not always the most visually appealing, but yeah, I think that was one that I repeated at one point.
What is your injury, if you do you mind sharing?
Oh, I've had this chronic, like, left hip tendinopathy
Okay.
that, I mean, when was this? I think this was a few years ago. I had this, but I had just completed 3 50Ks over the course of a year. It was
Okay.
definitely an overuse situation. I am one of those chronic, like, I'm one of those stereotypical runners that loves to run and hates to strength train and did not do anything to support myself, like,
Okay.
against injury. I was just being dumb. So I messed up my hip, and, and I think this is one of these things where, rarely are things caused by just one thing, right? So I think it was an overuse in part, but also I am definitely in perimenopause, and I think part of, like, the tendon and all that stuff is related to my hormones and all of that. I'm literally actually today starting HRT, so I'm a little
Okay.
nervous to see how that goes. Um,
It's gonna
but so I think
miraculously fix the hip.
yeah, right.
That's
I
what
know,
we hope
that's
for.
I'm
Yes.
just, like, hoping, but, we'll see. I know it's caused by multiple things, so, it's weaknesses, it's, like, it was overuse, but I was actually getting better and doing well, and then, a couple months ago, I was in Yosemite and did this just monster hike, up to the Upper Yosemite Falls with a friend of mine who's just, like, a beast of an athlete, and I could not keep up with her, and I pushed myself too hard, and it was, like, 4 hours and 15 minutes of insane effort for me, and the pounding down,
Yeah.
I was done. So my hip
Yeah.
was screwed after that. So we'll see. Back to swimming and biking.
Okay. Well,
It's alright. It's okay.
injuries do sting, but
Yeah.
hopefully the combination of a lot of things you will get through it eventually. It might
Yes.
just take longer
Yes.
than we all want. Okay.
Yep.
If you could have been a professional athlete in any sport besides running, what would you have picked?
Oh my god. I don't know. Um, Figure skating's kinda cool. I've always liked figure skating. Uh I'm born and raised in Santa Cruz, and I've always kind of not regretted, but, like, everyone always like, "Oh, do you surf?" I'm like, "No, I'm terrified of the ocean here." I'm like,
Of
"That would've been
sharks
pretty cool if
or
I could surf." Yeah, I don't know. I kind of am jealous of everyone who's out there surfing, that looks so beautiful. Yeah, so I'd say either surfing or figure skating.
okay, they're kind of on the opposite end, at least in
They really are
weather-wise. That's great.
random.
All right. Do you have any go-to hobbies unrelated to sports and to being a dietitian?
But yeah, so many. I
Okay.
love to read. Fiction. I am obsessed with collecting sea glass, so I'm just like
Okay.
a beachcomber. I love to go down the beach and find treasures of all kinds, but we get a lot of beach glass here, or sea glass, I mean. So I like to collect it and make things with it. Totally obsessed. I used to make jewelries when I was a kid, and I still
Wow.
have my, like, huge caboodle with all my, like, basically vintage beads and charms and God knows what in there. So I just love making things. So any kind of arts and craftsy type stuff, super into it. I can't draw for the life of me, but love creating things. Um, yeah, those are my main ones. I try to garden, but I kill plants. I'm really bad with indoor plants. I'm
Okay.
terrible. Gardening, I'm okay at.
All right. Well, maybe what's it called? Sea glass? Maybe that's your third career. When you're done with this one, you got
Yeah.
something to go back to.
Well,
It
yeah,
seems
I was
timeless.
like, I kinda wanna make, I was like, "Should I open an Etsy shop?" I'm like, "No, this is too time consuming,
Yeah,
like, I don't have time for this right now."
when you have time.
Yeah, it's literally, like, on the beach, it's, like, me and all of the, like, retired old people. we're all just fighting over sea glass. It gets vicious out there, seriously. No, it's great.
All right. Anything on your bookshelf, TV, or podcast queue that you're excited about or want to recommend?
I have read so many things. I'm like, now I need to pull up my Goodreads because I forget it. I really liked Atmosphere. That was so good. Was it her name? Jenkins something.
Okay.
I just finished Bright Years. That was really good too. I feel like I thought I had pull up my Goodreads. I'm gonna forget everything. The Nightingale was really good. Yeah, so many books. I can't even list them all.
Okay.
TV. God, yeah. I'm like drawing a blank. I love TV. I watch way too much TV. I only think of the things like I literally just watched, which I wouldn't. I mean, we just finished The Bear yesterday, the latest season. It was okay. I didn't love the ending, but um, God, what did we watch lately? That was so good. I'm drawing a blank. I'm so sorry.
That's all good. We heard a couple
Yeah,
books.
too many things. Too many things to list. Honestly.
Well, I'm glad that you have time to do you're making time for these things, which are really important to have the side things. All right, who's an athlete that you admire when it comes to longevity or simply an athlete that you admire?
Um, Des Linden is awesome. She's so cool. She just seems like super chill, and I'd want to meet her. Courtney Dauwalter is also super awesome. I had her on my podcast a million years ago,
Okay.
but yeah, they're just both seem like such great humans,
Yeah.
and there are many
And
others, but I'll just stop there.
yes. Yeah. 2 great runners. All right, last question. What is one habit that you swear by that's helping you age athletically?
Hmm. I think just trying to move my body every day to the best of my abilities. I don't do it every day, but trying my best to just move in some capacity because I think when I was younger, I just always like I'll be training, that won't be a problem. I'll always be moving. And um, they always say like, as you get older, you just kind of naturally move less. And I know that's not the case for everybody, but I know for myself, I work virtually. I sit at a desk and see clients and do all my stuff to run my business. And I have 2 kids and I have my older parents and like there's just like all these things. And I find myself, especially since moving away from New York City and now living in a suburban area where I am seated and I'm just so much more sedentary than I used to. And I have to really um, be very mindful to get up and move
Yeah,
beyond, you know, especially in recent years, because I just am not training as heavily as I used to, because I'm not training for these endurance events. So I know for many people, this won't be relevant because they're out and about and moving and all that time. But for me personally, I think it's just being very conscientious about moving because and getting outside and just, like, being in nature, like, those things are really important to me, and it's partly why I'm fortunate enough to live near the beach, and I can, within 10 minutes, be at the ocean on the beach, and walking on the beach, and looking around, and seeing the animals, and listening to the waves, and being present, and not on a screen, so I think that's a really important part of my life and my ability to age well.
yeah. Well, Claire, thank you so much for all of your time, and I think you touched on so many of the things that older athletes are thinking about and have questions about, and you really did add a lot of clarity. I know we weren't able to go super in depth on any of the many topics that we crossed over, but you did a great job of clarifying for us. And wanted to recommend again, make sure that listeners are checking out your podcast, Eat for Endurance, which you said comes out every other week. And and you've been doing that for how long?
It's, 7 years next month, which is
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, but thanks for so much for having me. It was really a pleasure to chat about all this stuff. And yeah, if people wanna find me, Eat for Endurance pretty much everywhere, Instagram and my website and my podcast and all that stuff. I
Yeah.
have a ton of free resources beyond just I have 7 years of podcasts, but I have tons of, like, downloads and blog posts and you name it. So lots of great ways to learn more about nutrition, without spending any money if you wanna just kinda learn more for yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Thanks so much for listening to Aging Athletically. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, give it some stars, and share it with a friend, training partner, or anyone who might enjoy hearing stories from athletes who continue to challenge themselves as they get older, or from experts who help us train smarter. You can find Aging Athletically on Instagram and YouTube, and I'd love to hear from you. Send me a message there or email agingathletically@gmail.com with feedback, guest ideas, or topics you'd like me to explore. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, keep training, keep challenging yourself, and keep aging athletically.